Welcome to Nuggets with Sauce, the podcast dishing up golden nuggets of wisdom and insight you can really sink your teeth into. I'm your host, Michelle Arntz. My guests and I serve up a saucy take on common business challenges here that feeds your hunger for knowledge and thought leadership. So let's dig in. Hey, if you are in the early stage startup space and you are wondering what are some of the traps and pitfalls and ways of thinking that might get in the way of getting ahead on your initiatives, you are in the right place today here on Nuggets with Sauce. Hello, everybody. I'm Michelle Arntz. I am your host, and I am over the moon to have my guest today, Diane Tarshis, with me. Diane is going to share so many great nuggets with us in this space of startups. So welcome, Diane. I'm so glad you're here today.
Jill, it's going to be fun. Thank you so much for having me.
I know, anytime I talk with you, it is a great conversation full of lots of energy, very thought-provoking. So I knew we had to share this with the masses together today. We're putting our heads together. So Diane, as you know, I always like to start nuggets by asking my guests not to give away what your job title is, because job titles, come on. We want to dig in and find out, what's really firing you up? Where's that, you've got a real passion and a real purpose, I know. So I'd love for you to just quickly share with our audience, what is getting you out of bed and firing you up? How are you making the world a better place?
The place where I love to be is helping people make their business dreams come true. So those ideas that they've been thinking about for years that are so big that it kind of scares them, that they feel a little intimidated by, but it's been in their minds for years as this dream that maybe they don't even tell anyone else about, but that they talk to me about it and we make it happen.
You're like the dream whisperer. You help get these things out and you help make it real.
Exactly. Exactly. Out of the head and into the world.
Out of the head and into the world. Diane will take you on that journey of getting there. I love that. See, that's so much more interesting and exciting than, putting a couple words on a business card.
Yeah.
So I thank you for sharing that. Now, before we dive in and really talk about these kind of, hey, startup leaders and early stage leaders, get your thinking caps on. Before we get to there, I always love to know, have you got a recommendation for us in terms of something to read or watch or listen to?
Ooh. Um, I can't say anything business related because I'm not a big like business book, business podcast listener, reader, etc. Um, so I'm gonna go with the last really good show that I saw, which is I was watching The Bear. I binged that and loved it. I thought the acting was amazing, the writing, the whole kit and caboodle. And I am on pins and needles waiting for the second season of The Diplomat on Netflix. I
Okay.
thought the first season was amazing.
Yeah,
So
there you go. Awesome. Well, The Bear's on my list. I haven't been able to watch it yet, so don't tell me anything, but I've heard great things. So yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for those recommendations too. And again, it's fair game. We shouldn't be doing business stuff all the freaking time. So, I love it when people give a suggestion that isn't necessarily about business because we know that taking a break from thinking about work all the time is important too.
I get my inspiration from everywhere. And most of it is not business related. Some of it is,
Right.
but the really creative
Yeah.
ideas, solutions to problems really come from a wide variety of sources. So
Otherwise, you find yourself being a hammer who's only ever looking for nails.
yeah, I like that.
Sometimes it's just got to switch up and be a screwdriver.
Yeah.
I get that. I love that. That's actually a really great take right there. See, bam, right out of the gate. There's a nugget. Look further and wider and don't just look to the workspace or your industry or the industry that you want to get into. Because there's a lot of, I'm a gardener, so I'm going to say cross-pollination that can happen and inspiration that can happen from some pretty surprising places. So, all right, so we got one really sweet, juicy little nugget, little taste right there. I think our sauce is going to be how how sauce and sassy are we going to be today, Diane?
Oh, I like to say my sauce style is smooth with a little bit of kick.
All right, smooth with a kick. All right. Well, let's just smooth sail right on in. And you and I have talked a lot in all the time that we've known each other and had some great conversations. But I know, you're really kind of like the Shark Tank advisor, like you're the, you're that person who's got that capacity and that thinking. So tell us like a top tip, a top kind of thing that it's like, man, they're just kind of missing it. If you're not thinking this way as somebody who's thinking about, to your point, making that dream come true and starting your own business, or maybe you're on that path a little bit and you're like, oh my God, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And give us our first little taste of what we could be thinking about or doing differently and better.
Well, it's funny because you bring up the Shark Tank aspect of this, and what I do is very much um, like the show in that I am helping founders um, get ready to instead of go on Shark Tank, enter the marketplace so they know what they're doing instead of guessing and pivoting.
Yeah.
And the
The real
thing
Shark
that
Tank, the real Shark Tank, which is the
the
real work.
Shark Tank
The Shark
of
Tank of
life and
life.
business. So, but the biggest, well, I would say the biggest problem or most consistent problem that I run into is founders thinking that they can skip maybe they're not thinking about this consciously, but they're skipping the fundamentals, the basics. They're going right to the sexy, fun, cool stuff. So they may be thinking about they've fallen in love with their business idea. They're not thinking about who their customer is, identifying what the very specific problem is that they're trying to address.
Is
Um,
there a customer? Is there a problem?
well, exactly. And are there enough of them? And
Yeah.
even if so, are they going to be able to, um, how are they going to deliver it? How are they going to price it? Is anyone going to pay for it?
Who else
Just
is
this,
doing that? And what are they doing that you could do differently or better?
yeah, just this morning I'm involved with a mentoring group, and there was a startup that was pitching in order to get advice.
Mhm.
And they really hadn't delved into the fundamentals of their business idea, where they really needed to, you know, as they say, get out of the office or out of the building
Mhm.
and talk to people. So they hadn't talked to, they were in the healthcare space.
Mhm.
So they didn't have any understanding of what the insurance reimbursement landscape was like. They didn't have a deep
Oh,
enough understanding of the competitive landscape. They hadn't talked to enough of their target customers, or even differentiating between their customers, the people who are buying the thing, versus the users, the people who are using the thing.
mm,
Sometimes it's the same
right,
people,
right,
sometimes it's different. And they needed to do a lot of talking to a
right.
lot of different constituencies.
Right.
So,
Do your homework, right? Like,
yeah.
it's a great idea, but great idea for whom. And so like I love what you're saying there. Like it is easy because we're kind of in a world that like, yeah, we all want to run for the sexy, cool, fun stuff first. Who doesn't? Right? Like most of it, well, I don't know, I can't say for everybody, but most of us would, it's like we're having fun when we're picking out the decorations or the this and the that, not, how the building got built, right? Like,
Well,
although,
they were asking how
yeah,
questions about how to scale, and I'm like, you gotta walk before you run. You gotta
right,
build the thing and
right.
get it growing first, and then
Yeah.
you can scale it.
And what are your potential investors? If you're going to ask anybody, unless you can bootstrap this all by yourself, if you're going to ask somebody for money, I'm guessing you're going to have to be thinking, what are they going to ask me about this? Like, you almost kind of have to think like you're in a court of law and you're under questioning, like we're going to cross-examine what's going on here. Like,
Well,
how,
that's what happens on Shark Tank, and
right,
that's exactly
right.
what happens.
Because I'm not going to give you my hard-earned dollars if I don't know that you know what you're doing. So don't skip those fundamentals. Do your homework. If you know it's a good idea, yeah, and knowing the difference between users, buyers, Who else is in that space? What are they doing? And again, it's not that if the town that I live in is to be believed, it's not that you can't have more than one pizza place. You sure can.
Right.
However,
How are
what
you different than the other
right,
guys?
what's going to make me choose one pizza place over another pizza place? Like and are there people, clearly there's people in my town who want different kinds of pizza from different kinds of places.
Exactly. And actually, to your point earlier, um, you're talking to investors and customers.
Yeah.
Both of those groups
Mhm.
have hard-earned dollars
Yeah.
that they are spending in a variety of places. And why are they going to put it at risk with you, whether they're a customer or an investor?
Right.
Same thing.
Right. Because you would want to do the same if you were, if you're listening to this or you're watching this, how do you want to spend your money? You don't just blithely throw it around. And if you do, you should get a hold of Diane and myself, and we'll help you take that money off your hands. Right? If you just want to chuck your money around, or if you'd like to burn money, I'll save you the hassle. I'll take care of that for you.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, but I think that that's, because I'm sure you see it too. It's like the dream is so exciting, but there has to be dreams. If you want to get up into the clouds, you got to build the scaffolding to get you up that high, right?
You know what? Well said. Exactly.
Okay, so fundamentals is number one. What else are you seeing in this space? What else is kind of something that you're like, man, if they just kind of knew this, things would be so much easier and better.
You know, I think a lot of people over the years in the entrepreneurship ecosystem have um there's this thinking about iterating,
Mhm.
constant improvement, which is very important,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of founders have misconstrued that to think that trial and error is a strategy. And in fact, the way that I look at things is that you can either be proactive or reactive. And the people who are using trial and error as their strategy are reactive. And that is wasteful in terms of time, money, potentially customer loyalty if you've already opened your doors. All of that is put at risk. Whereas if you do the homework, the legwork ahead of time before you open your doors, then you are reducing your risk and you are able to understand your business much better on a granular level. And you are able to make smarter decisions and be proactive and strategic instead of being like a pinball and bouncing around and being reactive, or like a firefighter putting
Right.
out whatever the daily fire is.
Great
So,
imagery. Great imagery. Bam. That is big nugget in some really tasty sauce right there. And I love everything that you just shared there. I was kind of like trying not to clap. Okay, I'm making clapping noises, clapping along. I'm nodding like crazy. I think that's also the case, honestly. That's not even just unique to early stage startups and entrepreneurs. I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of even more established companies that also think that trial and error is a strategy, and it isn't,
right.
right? So this is something that I would suspect, and I'm sure you've seen this, only compounds as time goes on. So if you're going trial and error and just hoping to hell that nothing lights on fire, or you're quick enough to stamp it out when you see flames, that's only going to grow until, it's that little spark that starts at the edge of the forest that sets the whole thing alight down the line and gets very out of control. And it's much harder to rein it back in. Is that fair?
It is fair. I mean, it ends up pulling your attention to the things that aren't as important, that are more superficial, instead of you being able to,
Mhm.
um, as I said earlier, think strategically about both the big picture and the details. Both of those are important. And if your attention is being pulled elsewhere, then you're not fully present and you're not in a position to make the best decisions that you could make. So,
Stressful and that's exhausting. When you're the founder, you're in the leadership team, and it's like you're wearing a lot of hats anyway, and it's like, well, you don't want them all to crush you. And can you get some of those hats off your head if you could do certain things, or at least, shrink them down so they fit better,
Right.
Right?
That is
So,
it's a tremendous amount of pressure
yeah.
and in my view, totally unnecessary.
Yeah. And I would suspect too, we look at, and I don't, everybody's got a different stat, but you look at the statistics around the fail rate
Right.
and startups and early stage businesses. I mean, it's pretty damn high.
It's 90% in 10 years.
Mm,
It is 70% in 5 years. So most startups, excuse me, not businesses, but specifically startups, fail within 10 years. And in my view, that is because of what we were just talking about, which is this trial and error strategy or
there is no,
winging it.
yeah, yeah, just winging it. We didn't think this through. I know from, and again, I obviously come from that workforce perspective. I know that just shy of 20% of the reasoning, 20% of the reasons they fail are based on the human equation. It's some HR personnel related issue.
You know what? You're absolutely right.
Because
And
nobody thought about that.
other biggie is running out of cash. So those are the biggies.
Yeah, yeah,
You have to um you have to certainly develop the right team, but in order to lead a team, you have to understand your business
right.
and you have to understand your customers.
Yes.
So,
And plan for contingencies and plan for, kind of fireproof yourself, right? Go around and see like, oh, this could happen. And being a little more anticipatory and asking people like you to help in that respect. Hey, I can't think of everything.
well, and to ask people like you when they're developing
Right.
their work culture, because we've all heard the stories. I'm sure both of us have certainly experienced it in the corporate world where we've worked in dysfunctional environments,
Yeah.
or where all the employees are feeling like the leadership doesn't understand what's going on. So,
Right.
founders want to make sure to build healthy, functional
Yeah.
um, cultures and workforces.
Yeah. And in tune with that is thinking it through, and you probably see this more than I do because you're digging more in at the very early stages. Think ahead and go, is it really a good idea to bring your brother or your sister-in-law into the mix? I mean, yeah, they came at the right price,
Yeah, yeah,
but what's the price that might be paid down the line and I mean, I've seen this happen where it's like, it causes a lot more heartache and headache in the big picture. If again, if you, to your point, if you'd thought ahead a little bit, planned ahead a little bit, you don't necessarily just want to slap something in place. You might want to slap your in-law if that's who you're bringing into the business, but you can't just kind of slap people into place or slap things into place like you're just putting 52 band-aids on something and hoping it all holds together, right?
you and I were talking recently about uh if I remember correctly, there was a situation where you had a client who had hired um all of the employees on a particular team had the same strengths instead of
Yeah,
developing a team that had a complementary mix
yeah,
of
yeah.
the strengths that were needed.
Mhm.
So being very thoughtful, that's why I love what you do, because it's very strategic in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
being thoughtful about how you develop your team to really optimize performance.
right. And I think that's part of the strategic plan when you're starting a business, perfectly put, is know yourself and your strengths as the
Mm,
founder, as the leader of this initiative. Know your blind spots.
exactly.
And if you don't really know what your strengths or your blind spots are, get help figuring that out, right?
That's
It might
exactly
hurt a little bit, but I'd rather get a needle in my arm than get the infection. You know what I mean? So figure that
exactly
kind of stuff out, use that as part of your strategy, and then you can be very much more strategic and smarter to your point around the what kind of help am I going to need and who are going to be the right people to get that help from.
exactly. And
'Cause-
if you've
Yeah,
done the fundamental business planning,
yeah,
um, then when you go through that process, then you understand what the needs of your business are, what the needs of your customers are is one part of that, but you have an understanding of the pieces you need to have in place and the human capital, the people that you need to have in place in order to
Right.
perform.
Because your dream is whatever. Your dream is the best donut shop. Your dream is this amazing new app that changes the world. Your dream is inventing what or whatever, manufacturing whatever. You can't do that all by yourself.
Right,
I'm a
right,
solopreneur and I can't do it all by myself. So
right.
and
Same.
so I think that's, so important. And again, so overlooked because we often get into the squeeze zone of like, well, and we're back to like the strategy and the money piece. Watch your money, but you might be better off spending the paycheck that was going to your kind of a pill of a brother-in-law. Maybe that spend could be better done elsewhere with some outside expertise, you know,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
a little less friction at the family dinner table while we're at it. So, that's a win-win, isn't it? Like that's a
Right.
BOGO right
Exactly.
there. Spend your money on something that makes sure that, or whatever, that you're getting the right people and you're thinking ahead in what you're doing there. I love what you're saying in that space. And I think again, we're in such a hurry to make that dream come true.
That's actually, you know what? You just made me think of something, which is that a lot of people come to me thinking that there is some deadline and they have to hurry up and get the thing built or hurry up and get funding. And anytime I hear that, I
Mhm.
think that is a false deadline. There is no deadline. It is better to do it right than to do
Oh,
it quickly.
right.
So
Yeah, I always think of, a baby elephant and a baby mouse are not ready to be born in the same time frame.
I like that.
So, are you trying to have, manner of speaking
You
is
always have good nuggets.
right. Well, that's why we're here. We're having nuggets. You and I are sharing nuggets. Dunk, dunk, dunk. Stuff to chew on. But I mean, that's a great point. How much of what we do as founders, leaders, how much of this struggle is self-inflicted?
Exactly.
Like I have this deadline in my head of what it's supposed to be. Why?
Even if you think somebody else is coming to market
Yeah.
and you want to be first to market, I'm gonna date myself here, but um, MySpace was like the big social media thing back in the day. They were first to market, but nobody knows who they are today.
My who?
Um, so Facebook came later.
Yeah.
So better that you do it right. There's never enough time to do it right, but there's always time to do it over. That's that kind of thinking.
Oh, can you say that again, please? Say that
There's never
again,
enough
please.
time to do it right, but there's always enough time to do it over magically,
Yeah.
like by magic.
Kind of like,
So better
yeah.
to do it right the first time.
Ounce of prevention, pound of cure, right?
Yeah,
You'll say. But
exactly.
yeah, I think that's such a great point. Again, bam, what an awesome nugget to share there, Diane, in the sense of that is true. Like just because somebody got there first doesn't mean they did it best.
Right. Right.
And sometimes getting there first is the word, I don't know. Sometimes being across the finish line first isn't necessarily doesn't
Yeah.
give you the reward that you think it is. So, I think it's great for anybody watching or listening our conversation here to be thinking about how many of these things are self-imposed and to your point, a false narrative that you think you're supposed to either do something in a certain time frame or do something at all because
Or
what?
or in a certain way.
Or in a certain way. I mean, I think there are some things that should be done better than others. Like, don't do anything
Yeah.
illegal. Don't do anything that hurts people. I mean, come on,
Right.
we should all know where to draw the line. But how much of that really is self-imposed? And then we're stressing ourselves out. I know I've caught myself doing that where I've put a heap of pressure on myself and then sat back. And my husband's usually, he's my he's my North Star and all this, but he's like, really? Like, who cares besides you?
Right.
You know,
Right. And
who
there's
besides
room for everybody as long as
right.
everybody's different. So you were talking about the pizza places,
Yeah,
and that's exactly the point.
yeah, yeah. I personally I'm going to go to the place that I like because they do some different toppings as opposed to the place that claims, and I would say prove it, that they've got the largest slices in the world. Know that for a fact. I'd like to know that for a fact, right?
Yeah.
I know which one I'm going for. I'm always a quality over quantity gal myself, but know your customers and know that I'll tell you what, the local high school students are all about the world's largest slice.
There you go.
Bam. So love that. What else, Diane? I mean, I know you've got a lot more that this is, we got to dig in a little deeper, chew on a little more here. So what else are we seeing in your space that,
So,
gosh, we
um, I would say most first-time founders think that uh, they need to raise outside funds in order to get their big vision, their business off the ground.
well, Shark Tank,
Um,
right? Or all these whatever these shows are
right.
that what's the other one? There's one called Elevator Pitch. Or
Oh, right.
right? It's
Exactly.
like I've got to go do these grandiose things in front of these high pressure people with the cameras rolling, or I'm not going to get any funding. How
Well,
often is that the case?
exactly. Or, you read the news, you listen to any podcast, and it's like a mark of success if you raise X million dollars. But my question is always, yeah, but are you profitable? Is your business going to be around in 10 years? Um, that's really the scorecard I want to measure myself against is staying power, continually growing, improved profit margins, expanded footprint, perhaps depends what kind of business you want. But there's a different measuring stick than how much you raise, which really has nothing to do with anything, in, in the sort of meta way that I think about being successful in business.
Right.
Um, so,
What are a
so a
couple
lot of people think they need that outside money out of the gate. I say wait as long as you can to do that. So either bootstrap, get friends and family money, perhaps, um,
fund me?
um, or even better, a lot of times I have clients who develop relationships with vendors or suppliers or partners who are somehow related to their business so that those people have a much better understanding of their business and are not looking to make a killing. They are looking to make a healthy, reasonable return, and they are much better
Sustainable.
to deal with.
Sustainable and integrated. Back to that ecosystem idea, right? You can start building out your business ecosystem through those relationships. And I'm thinking also, look at if you must go down the road of like, some loans or whatever, this is where the lack of relationships with your bank, because all you ever did was online banking and ATMs,
Right, right,
is now you're going to be really wanting to have a human being,
right.
not
Well,
your bank of blah, blah chatbot.
right. Well, and listen, even if you have a relationship with one of those large, like the top five banks or whatever, um, starting to develop relationships with community banks, they are looking to make loans,
That we're talking
for,
about.
uh, I want to say, ventures that are, going to make sense for them. It's a double-edged sword because I do say that banks are only lend money to people who don't need money, but
Mhm.
um but anyway, the last thing I want to say about this whole fundraising concept though is that the longer you can wait and the more you can prove your concept, the more traction you can get, the more uh sales and the larger the customer base and the healthier the profit margin, the stronger negotiating position you're in
Mhm.
order to get the best deal if you are going out for professional money from venture capitalists or angel investors or what have you.
So back full circle to where we started from, which was, make sure that you're being strategic right out of the gate. Trial and error isn't going to help you reassure anybody when you do come to the day that you ask for funding. Nobody's going to say, oh, you just wing it. I'm not investing in anybody who wings it unless
Right.
you're a Top Gun pilot. And even those cats prepare.
Exactly.
right? And that you're also going to be in that space of get really smart about what you need and what you're doing, and making sure that you are making yourself, as we were kind of saying, like sort of fireproof. Like you've got to plan for contingencies and reduce risk as much as possible. That's what's going to get you to this stage of, like, if I'm going to go around asking for money, by the time I'm doing it, trial and error is over. We're not even doing that anymore. We know what we're doing. We're lock solid. I love what you're saying in that space. It really just brings it full circle to the more you can do on the upfront smart, it sounds like,
Right.
the better on the back end when the time comes where you got to put your hand out and say, hey, can you help me get to the next level? My dream needs to be bigger now.
Right. Know
Because
your
we
customer
got it
is,
right. Because we
is
got it right at the smaller scale first.
exactly. Exactly. And the better you know your customer, which involves a lot of these
Mhm.
pieces on the chessboard,
Yeah.
then the better off and the more successful your business will be. So
Do your homework, be strategic, be smart, plan ahead, fireproof yourself. Wait as long as you can before you ask for funding.
mhm.
Diane, you are a treasure trove of information, knowledge, help, and wisdom in this space. I am so glad that we had this conversation on Nuggets today. Thank you so much for guesting with me. And I'm sure you're going to be back for another go round of great saucy nuggets to share with us. Thanks so much.
I'm Thank you so much. I am honored to be here. It is always fun talking with you. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Nuggets with Sauce. I hope we fed your appetite for insights and information on how to improve your business. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never go hungry for more valuable thought leadership.